Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday night, which means it's time for another Zoomcast. For those of you who don't know me, I'm BJ Ringrose, the manager of the Officiating Education Program at USA Hockey. Tonight's episode is episode 34. We're going to talk about the summer development camps of the USA Hockey Officiating Program. For those of you who may be aware or may not be aware, every single year, USA Hockey hosts a series of development camps, which are geared towards the up-and-comers, the thoroughbreds, the hot talent, whatever you want to call them, the guys that really want to take their development and their education to the next level, above and beyond what they normally go through with registration requirements and seminars and things like that. They have goals that they want to achieve. They have leagues that they want to work. And the summer camps tend to be a really, really good pathway to get you going down towards your goals. So joining me tonight is a great panelist, well established in both the USA Hockey officiating program, both on the ice and off the ice, but also they're really well established within our summer camp programs as well. They've participated as staff members. Starting off is Charlie O'Connor. Charlie O'Connor comes from the Riverview, Florida area, which is kind of in the greater Tampa area. Been an official for 20 plus years. He was a summer camp participant, worked his way up through all the different levels, starting with regional camp and national camp, and was a participant in our program of merit, which is our highest level camp. And he's used that camp as a platform to move on to bigger and better things. Most notably, he was an IIHF linesman for a couple of years and worked some tournaments. And at the same time, he has been in the ECHL for several years, including working multiple Kelly Cup finals within that league. So a really well-respected and well-established official within the ECHL. On top of that, he's also been participating as a instructor in our summer development camps for about 5 years now. Also joining us is Gui Bradshaw. Gui Bradshaw comes from the Cleveland, Ohio area. Been a USA Hockey official for just over 15 years. Works at WCHA, Division I ice hockey as a referee. He's also a USA Hockey Level 4 certified coach. So he works on our coaching program as well as our officiating program. So he really kind of knows both sides of the dasher board, so to speak. And he's really also well established in the player development aspect within the Mid-Am district. He works with the player development staff and the player development camps out in that area too. So he's got a head for development, and bringing him on board as a camp director into our summer development camp program has only just basically brought our camps to the next level. Just him using his development of players and bringing that kind of expertise into the role of developing officials within our summer camps. Lastly is Melissa Scola. Melissa Scola comes from the Sterling Heights, Michigan area, which is the greater suburb of Detroit. USA Hockey official for 15 years. Summer camp participant herself. She went to women's regional camp back in the day and then went on to the elite camp, which is the next level camp for the women's development path, and used that elite camp to earn her IIHF referee license and started working IIHF tournaments. And that played out for not too shabbily as she worked her way up through the different levels of IIHF competition, and then represented USA Hockey at the 2018 IOC Winter Games in Pyeongchang not too long ago. So Olympic official. She did pretty well for herself. Since then, she's taken a larger role off the ice as an admin. She now represents the Michigan district as the women's officiating RIC, serving under Russ Eidenberger as the district ref out there. And she has also participated as an instructor at our female officiating camps for a couple of years. So with that said, to our panelists, thank you. Thank you for joining us and welcome. We are going to start with a brief poll, as we typically do with every episode here in the Zoomcast. So launching the poll, 2 really, really quick questions. Question number 1, have you ever participated in an officiating continuing education program outside of annual USA Hockey registration? So whether you went to a USA Hockey national camp, or whether you went to a district camp or a local camp, or one of those more private camps like the Don Koharski camp or the California Referee School, any of those types of schools. Second question, have you ever participated in an officiating camp, be it USA Hockey, local or district, state or private? So the difference being, the first question is just asking about any type of education that you've done outside of the normal registration requirements. And then the second question being specific relating to camps. Okay, pencils down. All right, first question. Have you ever participated in an officiating continuing education program outside of annual USA Hockey registration? Looks like about 65% of you, so almost 2/3 of you have participated in some type of education program, which is really encouraging because we do have a registration requirements and we do really believe and we think we put a really good education program together for annual registration with seminars and modules and exams and things like that. But the reality of it is once you get that crest, that's it. In theory, it's on you as an official to continue your education and continue your development to have a successful season. So it's really encouraging to see that 2/3 of you have continued in some sort of continuing education program. Question number 2, have you ever participated in an officiating camp, be it USA Hockey or otherwise? And it looks like just over half of you have. So some of you may have the goal to participate in an actual national camp, national level camp, be it our Futures program or our high performance program. And we're going to talk a little bit about the process of getting into those programs and what those programs can offer to you. So with that, we will move on to our topic. And just to get this thing going, I'm going to share a graphic with you. Get this thing open. So this graphic that I'm sharing with you is our long-term officiating development program template, which for those of you who may be involved in coaching or may pay attention to player development and some of the materials that we put out on our player development path, this looks very, very similar to what you see within our American development model system, where you have the different tiers of development for a player. We within the officiating program recognize that first and foremost, officials are not unlike athletes. They are athletes, plain and simple, and they also have their development path. And really, a lot of the fundamentals that belong within the American development model really do relate and pass over to the officiating development path as well. So that's where we built this template from. And as you can see, it starts from the recruitment phase and then moves on to the learn to train phase. And that's where you're going to your first seminars and registering for the first time and getting your first bit of education. And then you move on to the train to train phase, where that's where the majority of our officials really end up. Of our 25,000 officials across the country, the majority of them get to that train to train phase where they're receiving their education every single year and going through their annual steps of registration every single year. And they go out and they're perfectly happy to go out and work their 12 and under games and 14 and under games. And we're more than happy to have them out there. They go out there and just be the best darn Pee Wee official that they can be. However, there are some officials out there that just for whatever reason, they decide to go a little above and beyond. And they want to get into a different league, or they want to get up to the next level, be it high school, be it college. Maybe they want to work pro or something along those lines. And that's really where you break that barrier of going from the train to train phase to the learn to compete phase. Because the reality of it is, if you want to go work a league, leagues only have so many officials. You know, the roster for the NHL is roughly about 80 or so officials, give or take. And they're all full-time officials. If you want to work in the National Hockey League, you have to take one of their jobs, and they're not going to let you have it. The NHL officials are some of the most competitive people that I know. To get there, you have to be competitive yourself, and you have to compete with other officials to get there and to earn your spot on a National Hockey League officiating roster. Same time, if you're going to work your way in, someone's got to leave. So you're going to have to literally take somebody's job. So that's where the aspect of learning to compete comes in. If you want to work at the next level, you have to learn to compete at the next level. So learning to compete is really where these summer camps fit into the whole mix of things. It's learning the fundamental tools and all the skills that you need to work on and develop your craft. So hopefully that you're ready for the next level. And I'll start off with Charlie. Charlie, you worked your way up. You took the camps. You came out of regional camp, or futures camp as it's now known, and national camp, or high performance camp as it's now known. And that's really where you started to learn to compete and work your way into the ODP and other levels. Correct, Charlie?
Yeah, absolutely. I started officiating back home in Florida, but I actually went to college in New Hampshire. So the summer before my freshman year at the University of New Hampshire, I went to what was then called regional camp, now futures. And I got my foot in the door that way. After that camp, I ended up being lucky enough to get hired by the ODP and work some tier 3 level games. And I used that as a stepping stone to then going to what is now high performance camp. And I used that opportunity then to get into the USHL and moved out west, and then on to eventually pro hockey and a little bit of the IIHF. So those camps were a big stepping stone for me and my development. It was eye-opening for me, especially from a kid from Florida, where at that time there wasn't a lot of hockey around, but there is now. So I love the camps. It was a great experience, and they were good stepping stones in my career.
Thanks, Charlie. Pass it over to Mo real quick, because you came through on the women's side of things. A lot of guys are obviously pretty familiar with the stepping stones of the men's process of futures camps, high performance camps, and so forth. Women's is a little bit different. I mean, they have their futures camps, which is where you start, but at the same time, you kind of make that jump to the elite. Coming out of the elite camp, there's only so many IIHF licenses, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's also changed from the sounds of it moving forward as well. So it looks a little bit different. But yeah, when I received my license years ago, we had A and B officials through the IIHF, and you were licensed as either a referee or a linesman. So when you talk about the nature of competing, it's the same thing. We only have so many slots as a country, and you need to fight for that spot. So elite camp was one of those spots where you were able to take what you've learned at regional camp or now futures camp and apply that to the games there at a higher level in hopes of earning your license and the ability to one day potentially skate an IIHF tournament.
Great, fantastic, Mo. And then Guy, working at the Division I college level, say like the WCHA, the roster there is only so big. You only have so many referees. And of course, everybody wants to work the big game. Everybody wants to earn playoffs. Everybody wants to work the finals in the playoffs. There's competition amongst all the officials within that level. Is there not?
Absolutely, there is. We're all friends, but we're all out there the same as the players and the teams. You want to be there at the end. You take pride in how far you get, and every year you hit the reset and you're going again. If you make it to the end, you want to get back. If you don't make it to the end, you want to get at least a step further than you did the year before, and always shooting to be there at the end. There's no question that we are all, competing within our leagues in college and also on the national stage to get into the NCAA tournament.
Excellent. Thanks, Guy. So we really talked about what drives people towards the camps and how the camps can be used, and really what the overall theme of what you're learning when you enter the camp system. But to get there, actually, there's even competition in and of itself. To ultimately get on a camp roster and have the opportunity to get into a camp, there's an application process, and you have to compete with other officials from your local area, from your district area, to hopefully get selected and get the opportunity to actually come to a camp. And just to kind of put that information out there, if you go to our summer development camp site at USA Hockey, just simply go to usahockey.com, hover over the officials tab at the top of the page, and then the drop-down menu that appears under it, you'll see a link for the summer development program. At that, you'll see the dates, the upcoming dates, and so forth. Those haven't been posted for this year yet, only just because with COVID being what it is and the pandemic and so forth, everything's kind of pushed back a little bit, and we're kind of waiting on state restrictions and college campuses giving us the go-ahead to hopefully host a camp on their site this summer. But so we're kind of in limbo right now. But by referring to that camp or that site, you'll see information with the camps, but also you'll see where you can apply for a summer camp. And it's an online process. We'll go online, put in your personal information. You'll be asked to submit a resume for yourself to give everybody a little bit of a background of what types of games you've worked, what levels, at the same time, references and stuff like that, that make you hopefully outshine everybody else a little bit, that you'll get that opportunity. And again, Chuck, you working your way up through the various levels, how important would you say that resume is in basically selling yourself? Because you're a person that had to sell yourself not only from the tier 3 junior level up to the tier 1 junior level and even to the pro level. How important is it to basically sell yourself?
I think it's super important, and I think it's critical not only to have a resume that looks good on the ice, that I was able to do this game or that game, or I've conquered this level and moved on to this level to show progression as time goes on. But I think that resume of showing your off-ice tasks for your local association and giving back is also very critical. And I think it's looked at by all the leagues. Are you a good teammate? Are you a person that gives back to the community and your local organizations? And all those things are looked on as you climb the pyramid and you get closer and closer to the top and it gets smaller and smaller. Those little things turn into big things. And that's really what separates those who are successful and those are just who have good careers versus those who have super good careers.
You make a really, really good point, Chuck, about the off-ice thing. A lot of officials are out there working junior hockey right now. A lot of officials are already out there working midget hockey and the best of youth hockey right now. Those little things like even, taking those advantages, those opportunities off the ice can really make a big difference. And I'll pass this over now. We'll start with Gui, because Gui, you're a local supervisor out there in the Cleveland, Ohio area, and you're pretty well established with all the, the state level, all the admins within the officiating world. And of course, you got a really good relationship with Jim Weaver, your district referee in chief. Have you ever had anyone reach out to you to be a reference on their behalf?
Oh, absolutely. I've had officials locally in the greater Cleveland area and officials who I've seen at, say, our Tier 2 state tournaments that may not be from Cleveland, or even that I've seen at districts that may be outside of Ohio that I've worked with over the years, who have asked me about being a reference for them. And really, it's easy to do when you see them not just work, but when you see them in the locker room, the character of the official. That's what I like to see when I'm going to go and go to bat for somebody and be a reference. Is okay, I know what you can do on the ice, but what else do you bring to the table?
That's another really, really good point, Keith. The whole idea, the attitude of the official. Lots of officials can skate well. Lots of officials know the rule book, but ultimately, you, Guy, or you, Mo, who I'm just about to pass a question to, you being references and basically championing someone to go to one of these camps, you want them to represent your area well and your district well. And Mo being the women's RIC out there in Michigan, I'm guessing a lot of the female officials use you as a resource and a reference. How important is that attitude factor of knowing that they're going to go in there and they're not going to go in there and basically just make everybody angry within basically the first 5 minutes of camp, or get on the staff's bad side within the first day or so? How important is that attitude factor?
It's really important to me. And one of the big things I encourage from a young age or an early officiating career is the connection. So at seminars, or when I see girls at a rink who seem to be, and the guys too, interested in officiating, it's making that personal connection so that I can learn about them, those kind of habits and things that they like to do, things they don't like to do, and their want to give back in the community. We need it here in Michigan, I know for sure. And I want to know when I'm sending them somewhere that that's something that they're willing to continue, not just because they feel like they need to, but because they really want to.
Thanks, Mo. And you, again, hit another really, really great point. And actually all three of it kind of did, like that obligation. It really is an obligation. You going to a camp and participating in a camp, you are obligated to take what you learn and bring it back home. Yes, there is a little bit of a self-interest factor to it, where you want to learn all you can and use it to progress and move up the levels and all that. But at the same time, not everyone within your local area has the opportunity to go to a camp, whether it be time, whether it be maybe they're a little bit too old to participate in a camp. Say it's a 50-year-old guy who has no interest in working pro hockey or anything like that, but just wants to get a little bit better and is always looking for a little piece of advice to make themselves a little bit better when they're out there working youth games. It really is an obligation of all of our participants, once they go through camp, to bring that information back home. And that's ultimately how it plays out and makes the overall hockey community better by sharing that information. So yeah, again, great points from all of you guys. So we go through the application process, and once those applications are all collected, they're passed out to the district RICs. Them and their support staffs go through all the applications, and ultimately they make those decisions of who is our best candidates, who are our best candidates coming out of the district that will represent us, and they're in the best position to take full advantage of this summer camp program when they go. And in some cases, obviously not everybody gets selected, and it's not uncommon to be shot down once or twice before you're ultimately selected to go and participate. That's just kind of the reality of the business. But if you keep at it and keep working hard, you should get that opportunity eventually. So you go through the application process and you get accepted, and the invitation email comes in. It tells you where you got to be, what program you're participating in, and what date it starts on, and so forth. Now it's time to prepare. And generally you have about 6 to 8 weeks to get yourself ready from that invitation to the actual starting of camp. And I'll throw this to Chuck. From a preparation standpoint, what are some key things that you might want to think about as you're preparing yourself to arrive at camp?
Yeah, I think the biggest foundation that all officials have to rely on is rule knowledge. And obviously at any kind of camp where we're competing and trying to make each other better, knowledge of the rules is such a foundation that you need to have the moment you step into camp. These camps aren't something where you learn the rules as it goes. Obviously there'll be some techniques and maybe some caveats that are pointed out to you, but rule knowledge, coming prepared, knowing the rules, because there will be rules tests when you get to the camp, and then controlling the things you control, your fitness. Obviously, you want to be in as good of a shape as you can be going into camp, because there is a physical component to it. And I think controlling those two things that are really within your own control are two of the best ways to get yourself ready for camp.
Great, thanks, Chuck. Now, Guy, you being a camp director, and the difference between instructors are primarily teaching most of the curriculum. They're evaluating the performance of the officials and giving the feedback. Camp director is a little more bigger picture and basically overall looking for the overall operations of the camp. He's working hand in hand with our host facilities and making sure that the game schedule is all synced up and we know where to put our officials game-wise. So they're working on the game schedule. They're recording and keeping track of all the materials and the testing grades and stuff like that. That's really where that camp director plays his role. But you, Guy, as a camp director, you really do see the big picture of it all. So if someone were to reach out to you as a participant, I'm going to go to my futures camp, my first ever futures camp. I'm a little bit nervous. What should I be looking at to prepare? What should I be doing for myself to prepare?
I think Chuck hit on some of the points with the rules and the physical preparation. But a big thing is, how you mentally prepare yourself to come to a camp. As you're getting there, realize that you may be coming from a situation where you're a big fish in a small pond, or a situation where, there's a lot of officials who have worked with you, depending on if you come from a large area or small area. And now you're going to meet a whole nother group of officials, and you're all going to be in there together. And, while it is a competition of sorts, because you're competing, you're learning to compete, you want to come in with an attitude of, I'm going to be humble. I'm here to learn. I'm here to absorb what not just the instructors and the camp director can give to me, but also what my peers in this camp can give to me. I think some of the best things that I've seen campers develop have come from peer feedback and those conversations that you have and that peer support. That's huge. And when you walk through that together as a group, you come out with some new friends who you can relate to as you go forward in your careers.
Excellent. Thanks, Guy. Mo, Chuck talked about physical fitness. We talked about rule knowledge. Obviously, having knowledge of the rule book is really, really important. But physical fitness is also really, really important as well. You want to come in shape. You being a gym owner yourself, and basically it is your profession to basically work with people who want to get physically fit. Is there any kind of, some simple guidelines you can give to any prospective participants out there who want to prepare for camp?
I think the biggest thing that you can do is not pigeonhole yourself into one activity, I guess you could say. We know we're going there to be on the ice. We know we need to be fit on the ice. We also need to be fit off the ice. The different camps that I've been to, all of the testing has been just slightly different. So I think it's really getting yourself ready in a lot of different areas, making sure that, your cardio endurance is up there, making sure that our strength is there as well, because both those components come into play both on and off the ice. So just running might not be the best bet. Just cycling, only strength training might put you behind a little bit, where we need to kind of look at the big picture and do lots of activities to get ourselves ready when it comes to cardio and strength, as well as your on ice. We can always improve our skating, and that will help with the testing as well. And nutrition goes a long way. So I think between the two of those, you'd put yourself in a good position.
So basically what you're saying is cut back on the pizza and just kind of keep it broad as far as exercising, which is, we do physical testing at each of the camps. There is a physical testing regimen that all the participants will go to, but you know, we really don't want our participants to prepare themselves just for the test. You know, basically working a game does not necessarily follow the guidelines of what our physical fitness test is. You should come in just general overall shape and be ready for just about anything, because you know what may have been done last year, and you may have gotten all the secrets from your buddy who went to camp last year of what we did for physical testing. It might change from year to year. So don't necessarily, as Mo correctly said, don't pigeonhole yourself and paint yourself into a corner by simply doing one thing to prepare for camp. So I think that's absolutely fantastic advice. So we talked about preparation. Now we're actually getting to the point where we're arriving to camp, and we've flown into town, or we've hopped in the car and driven 100 miles or 200 miles or wherever, and we've actually gotten on the campus site. So it's arrival day. And generally the first person you will meet when you get on site is the camp director, correct, Guy?
That is correct. Unless you get on.
So you'll meet your camp director. And again, the camp director being responsible for the overall operations of the camp, he'll be the one checking you in as a participant. Guy, maybe you can talk a little bit about the facilities and what they can kind of expect when they arrive on campus.
Sure. The camps that I've been involved with, you're on a college campus, you're going to be staying in a dorm room. You know, it's going to have the basics that you need for that week. And, you know, the schools that we work with, if there's something that's missing, we can get it adjusted. But basically, you're going to come in prepared with, you know, your clothes, with, they'll supply you with the bedding and all of that sort of stuff. Bring your toiletries, the things that you're going to need to get through the course of a week. Bring those athletic socks. Don't bring your flashy ones that you bought because they had the cool saying on them. And just recognize that it's not going to be a lap of luxury, but it's also not going to be sleeping on a cardboard box. You know, it's a simple dorm room. You're not going to spend a ton of time there other than when you're sleeping, and just be ready to get out and move, because you're going to be moving a lot and you're going to be in classroom.
Thanks, Guy. And I think you hit the nail on the head right there with the housing. It's not glamorous, but actually the facilities that we operate our camps on they're pretty nice overall. The beds, you know, some are a little more comfy than others. Some dorm rooms are a little more nicer than others, but overall, I think they're all, first and foremost, they're all very accommodating, but I think they're very comfortable and provide everyone with what they need to get through the week. So Guy talked about the housing. I'll pass it over to Chuck. How about the meals? What can be expected there, Chuck?
Yeah, they're basic college dorm meals. In my experience, I've got to go to a bunch of different locations now as a participant and as a camp director. And just as Guy was talking about the dorms, how they're all exactly what you need, and some might be a little bit better than the others. Same thing with meals. Usually at every place that I've been to, you have a vast selection of food. Obviously, you're going to have your regular college dorm food, but they also, especially in the recent years, they're going to have food for you, like salads and nutritious food as well, to keep you fueled and ready for everything you're going to have to do at a camp. So you have all the selections for any dietary needs. I know there's been some participants in the past, and we've been able to accommodate that. So be ready. It's not a 5-star cuisine. You're not going to be sitting there getting waited on, but it's buffet-like style eating, and so far every place I've been has been great.
Great, thanks, Chuck. So moving on, we've talked about the housing and the meals. We've kind of gotten a feel on the facilities and all that. I mean, one other thing we can talk about is a little bit is the certainly the daily schedule, and kind of start with Mo here. Maybe you can give a little bit of an outline of what a prospective participant can expect as far as the daily schedule. You know, starting from the morning to the evening.
Yeah, for sure. Every day can look slightly different, but pretty much cover the same schedule, if you want to call it that. We usually have a workout fit in there somewhere, lots of classroom time. So sometimes we start out in the classroom for a couple hours, then head out to an outdoor facility, usually for a workout, come back into the classroom, then we're on the ice for either some conditioning or testing or games back in the classroom. It kind of goes back and forth between basically those few different things: your physical fitness, your classroom sessions, and your on ice, whatever that might be. And then something else we like to do on the women's side is a lot of team building as well. So although, again, we've mentioned this before, it's individual and we're competing against each other, we still like to incorporate the team building aspect and see how ladies work with each other. Mix those groups up sometimes and throw others back together and just see the dynamic of the group as a whole. And that's a lot of fun.
Thanks, Mo. And it doesn't really differ that much, I don't think, on the men's side either. I'll pass it over to Gui. Gui, they do a lot of team building on the men's side, do they not?
Absolutely. We want to encourage that for the participants to recognize that, you know, you're going to need to rely on your teammates when you're out there on the ice during your games, especially as you go up in the level. I think both Mo and Charlie would agree that, you know, the more intense it gets, the more you're going to rely on those teammates with you in those crucial situations. And so learning to trust people, even though you may not know them for a long time, is big, and learning to work with them and having your own ability to do team building as you come out of these activities and as you come out of the camp is going to be huge, because, you know, at any given day, you may walk into a locker room with officials who you're on staff with on the same college conference or, you know, in the ECHL or internationally, but you don't know them. So you have to quickly to be able to develop that trust.
Oh, really good point, Guy. I noticed we got a couple of questions and we will get to them. Just to remind everyone, if you have a question, feel free to use that Q&A feature that should be right there on your screen if you're watching from home. And again, we will get to those questions in just a moment, but kind of rolling along the lines of team building, I'll pass it over to Chuck real quick. I mean, on top of building that ability to build rapport with other officials and build a team with other officials, it plays an aspect of even just getting through the week. I mean, you've been through every single camp we have. It's a long week, and it can be a long week. And if people aren't necessarily getting along together too well as a team, it can be a really, really long week, correct?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I think it's super important. The one thing that I learned from the first camp that I ever attended for USA Hockey is I was lucky enough that you're going to see a lot of these participants that you're with again, if you're lucky enough to get to the next level. Or the next camp down the road. And it's so important to build that relationship, because the better that the team works as a whole, the more beneficial the camp as a whole will be to everybody. If as a camp instructor, if we had to deal with problems with issues with participants for whatever the reason may be, it takes our ability away from teaching you and making you better on and off the ice, into having to focus on those problems instead. And I've met some of my best friends in the world from the camps that I've attended. And it's great to meet new people from different areas, especially for me. I was from little old Florida, not the biggest hockey hotbed in the world. And to be able to learn and gain insight from other officials from across the country, it's so important.
It's a really good point, Chuck. And it's funny you guys bring that up, because I believe it was last week I got a voicemail in my business voice box, and I saw the name attached to the voicemail. And I immediately recognized it. It was a guy that I went to regional camp with, and I won't necessarily put the year out there, but let's just say it was a while ago. but I do remember, I immediately recognized the name. And to really drive the point home about how long it had been since him and I had attended regional camp back then, he was calling on behalf of his son. And his son was now an official and working and was trying to get through the registration process. He had a couple questions for me, but he mentioned it right in his voicemail. He said, I don't know if you remember me, but you and I went to regional camp back together, together back in the day. And unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to talk on the phone. But again, just it's amazing how those relationships you build in the camp just stick with you, and you get through that week. And it's something you get through together as a team, and you can always fall back on. You see that official later on a tournament, or maybe you're working a league together somewhere down the road. You can always share that experience that you had by going through summer camp together. Getting to one of our questions, somebody asked about the selection process and whether there's a certain amount of spots given to a specific state or a district. A long time ago, there really was. We allocated a certain number of spots to every single district. And we've really moved away from that, particularly with the basic level camp, the futures camp. And a lot of that is ultimately, we just want to choose the best officials who fit the mold to go to camp. So to give, say, one district, 8 spots, well, 6 out of their 8 officials may be prime candidates for that camp. But the other 2 aren't necessarily prepared, be it game experience, be it experience within the 3 official system. They just need a little bit more polish. They need a little more experience before they're ready to attend a camp like this. So to give those 2 spots to those 2 officials versus 2 officials from another district just because they get their 8 spots is really doing a disservice to the overall educational process. We want to bring in the best participants we possibly can. So as far as putting yourself in a position to go, ultimately just go out there and work every game you can, get every bit of experience that you can, particularly in the 3 official system. That's something we specifically look for, and work your way up and build yourself a good resume and a good list of references, like we talked about a little bit earlier here in this episode. So we talked about the daily schedule a little bit. The classroom sessions, there's really 2 major components to it. You have your classroom sessions where we talk about the education, where we'll talk about the different things like judgment, on-ice mechanics, positioning, and things like that. But at the same time, we also have our ice sessions. And I'll go over to Mo with this one. It's the ice sessions can be just as important as those classroom sessions. I mean, you're going through a lot of drills that are pretty similar to what you'll go through in a normal seminar, but at the same time, to have the staff, and we really haven't talked that much about the staff, but I mean, I've already talked about the resumes of everyone here on this panel. It doesn't deviate too much from that. You have officials here who have worked IIHF competition, pro hockey, Division I college hockey. These are officials that have worked their way up to some of the highest levels of our game, and that's your instructor staff. They're the ones watching you out there on the ice as you go through their drills. It really kind of ramps it up a little bit on those on-ice sessions, does it not, Mo?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's talking about the level of skating that's required for the level of hockey you're hoping to officiate one day, or the mechanics themselves. I know we really try to pass on to them what is being looked for, what's going to take you to that next level, and how do we do that within game experience, so you get so much information, just like at any camp or any classroom, whatever it might be. And how do I now apply this? I have so many things I was told. We help work them through that. So can we pick 2 things to work on this game? What's your focus? Or on the ice today, we're going to be working on, and lay it out there for them so it's not overwhelming. But it's really sharing with the participants what is needed to achieve the next level.
Just applying another set of polish, basically. You get your annual polish in the seminars every single year, but it's applying another coat basically to make you look that much more shiny, that more refined, and that much more of a professional out there. We talked about physical testing quite a bit, and preparing yourself physically to come to camp and being in the best shape you possibly can be when you arrive. We didn't talk a whole heck of a lot about written testing, and I'll go to Gui with this one. Basically, all camps feature 2 tests. And can you talk a little bit about the 2 different camps, or the 2 different exams that we feature at camp?
Well, we feature a rules exam, which is going back to what Charlie talked about with your preparation. One of our fundamental tools is rule knowledge out there on the ice as an official. And so, yes, you will be tested on that, because otherwise, what can we do if we can't have the rule knowledge to apply in those game situations? And then beyond that, we do additional testing. And sorry, I've got background noise at my end. BJ, can you go for a moment without me?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Just
real quick, I gotta.
No problem, Guy. Just to kind of follow through on where Guy was going with this, we talked about the rules exam that we administer on every single camp. Also, on top of that, there are a series of quizzes that we do over the course of the week, and a lot of that's to pay attention to see that you're paying attention and confirming that you're paying attention to what the instructor staff is sharing in the front of the room. But at the same time, we also have our procedurals exam, procedures and mechanics. So we want to know that the officials know how to do things correctly from a positioning standpoint, from a mechanics, basically the mechanics of an icing call. What does the front official do? What does the back official do? We want to know that the officials have a good foundation laid with positioning and mechanics and all that kind of stuff from a USA Hockey standpoint. So that really is what it's all about as far as written testing. So we do the classroom sessions and share all the knowledge and the information that we can. At the same time, we have our on-ice sessions where we use that to basically test them on what they learned in the classroom. But ultimately, in the evening, we do games. And Mo talked about that when she talked about the daily schedule. There are games in the evening. We run our officiating camps hand in hand with some district level or national level player development camp that's going on at the very, very same time. And we use their games for our officials to work, and we evaluate them. And I'll go to Chuck with this one. You as an instructor are responsible for evaluating those games and providing that feedback back. How critical do you think that is in the overall education process for the camp?
I think it's super important for two reasons. The first reason is obviously we want to see how you've taken what you've learned in the classroom in the ice sessions and applied that to the games. And the evaluations we don't go in and try to beat you up for a mistake here, a mistake there. That's not the case whatsoever. We're looking to see if you're building on those foundational items that we talk about in the classroom and then on the ice and the skating, and use those. And we're really looking for your coachability. Are you able to go out there, retain the information that you're given and apply it? And you're going to make mistakes. We don't expect any official that attends any camp at any level to be perfect. None of us are ever perfect. But to go out there with a good attitude and give us your best on the ice. And one of the greatest things that we do now that's evolved is the use of video. And we have the video and we can break it down with you where, you may have missed this high stick call, but why did you miss it? Maybe you weren't in the right position. Maybe your skating wasn't putting you in the best position to have a good sight line. And the evolution of video, I think, has been so beneficial to these camps. And when I went to the camp, it was the first time I've ever seen myself on video. And it's quite an experience to see yourself on video for the first time if you haven't seen it before.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. We got a couple more questions. I'm going to get to them in just a moment here. Actually, no, we'll go to the questions now. Someone asked about the age level for these camps and what specific age level do we look for with these camps? And only because it's really these camps are geared towards officials who are trying to establish themselves and work themselves up the ladder, work their way into junior hockey and work their way into college hockey and so forth. These camps do tend to be geared towards younger officials. You do have to be at least 18, and that's really just about liability and responsibility. And we're not going to allow anyone under the age of 18 to participate in any of these camps. So anywhere in the 18 range, and usually the higher end, particularly with the Futures Camp, is roughly around 28 or 29. That being said, is it a hard cutoff? No, absolutely not. If someone is somewhere in their early 30s and they show the drive to make it in and work their way up the levels, and they have the right attitude and the right spirit, we will take that recommendation from the district and consider that person for camp and bringing that person into a camp. But someone also asked if I'm an older official, someone actually specifically asked if I'm an older official who wants to have a continuing education experience, wants to learn outside the typical registration seminars and things like that, what can I do? And really, these camps aren't necessarily for that type of officials. There are a lot more grassroots programs out there, like California Referee School, the Pittsburgh Elite Officiating Experience out there in the Western Pennsylvania area. There are a couple of those private camps that are really more geared towards grassroots officials who just want to come in, get all they can out of it. They get a really, really good staff in front of them that's not even too much different from our USA hockey camps, guys that have worked, say, junior hockey and professional hockey that are there to teach, and they just want to get something out of it. They want to get a good educational experience and go back home and apply what they've learned. Those types of programs exist out there. Another program from the national level is the District Officiating Seminar. Again, if you go to usahockey.com, hover over the officials tab in that drop-down menu, you'll see a link for District Officiating Seminars. Those programs are run on a weekend basis. Really, they're basically, I refer to them as a super seminar. Instead of your normal online this year, instead of your normal seminar that you go through for registration, these programs are a weekend experience where you'll come into wherever they're being hosted. And we do usually about 3 or 4 throughout the country every summer. And you'll come in on Saturday morning, and we devote all day Saturday and just about all day Sunday to basically a classroom and on-ice experience. The only thing missing in the DOS versus the camps is the games. There aren't any games in DOSs, only because we don't necessarily have the games to run those programs around. So really, we base it around no different from a normal seminar, the in-classroom experience and the on-ice experience of going through drills. But on top of that, on top of the normal on-ice practical drills that you do, you also get a lot of power skating instruction at those DOSs, where one of our elite power skating instructor will come in and help you break down your stride, find where the little weak links are in your stride, and then build you back up, which actually ties in nicely to the point that I wanted to make earlier. And I'll throw this actually out to Mo now that I got my mental train back on the tracks. Mo, as an instructor, you're doing the evaluation and giving the feedback to those participants who are working the games. What's the approach as far as giving that feedback back? Because I think there might be a little bit of a mentality of it's a grind them down, it's a beat them down, like, basically that type of mentality when we're giving that feedback back. But that's really not the culture anymore, is it?
I would say it's not the culture at all. It definitely used to be, and kind of a mental game. And I think people wanted to see how tough you were and what would break you down. But I don't see it that way at all anymore. I know for myself and the camps that I've been involved in, we want to see progress. We want to see positive progress and change. And I know I like to treat people the way that I like to be treated. So respect is a big thing for me. And I want to see effort being put in, and just like the boys said, we're not looking for perfection at all, but we're looking for that change and the effort to be given. So for me, it's all about the want. I want to learn it. I want to try to be better, and I'm going to do the best to make those changes in this time that I have. And then when I go back home, I'm going to continue to work on that. So the approach has changed a lot.
Yeah, we even try to point that out also in the video aspect. Chuck was talking about how we're using video and capturing videos to the games to actually share in the classroom and learn in the classroom. That's really the day one message right out of, like, look, we're not looking to make a public spectacle of anyone. This is a learning process. You made a mistake out there. Everybody makes mistakes out there. Watch enough NHL games on TV, you will recognize when an NHL official makes a mistake. It's all about the learning process and learning from those mistakes. And that's really what it's all about. So it's meant to be a positive process for everybody. And we all learn from each other as we go through that week. Going to Gui, basically talking a little bit more about that culture aspect of the camp. And you've sat in the exit interviews certainly enough times. And basically you have those participants come in one by one and basically get a little bit of feedback from how the overall week went for them, and any last questions they may have for the staff. But inevitably, and I know I've sat through enough of these, inevitably a lot of participants always ask, how did I do for the week? Where did I rank amongst the participants of the staff, the participants within the camp this week. How did I do overall? Is that really the mentality of the camp? Is that really the question they should be asking?
No, I would say that is not the question to be asking. I mean, it shows that you have that competitive drive, but at the same time, that's not what we want you focusing on as you are walking away from the camp and saying, you know, okay, I finished top 3 or I finished 2. Great. I'm walking out on a positive note, as opposed to I finished 10. I'm walking out on a negative note. No, it's about the growth that you've had within that week and what tools you have been given to help you continue that growth as you move on from that week. Those are the sorts of things that you need to be focusing on. And those are the questions that we really want to get and we really appreciate is the official who is reflecting on themselves and saying, okay, I recognize that this was going on with my skating early in the week. I felt like I had some progress. Last note, what can I do to continue that progress with my skating? Or, you know, I felt like my sight lines got better throughout the week. What did you guys see at the end versus at the beginning? Not, you know, was I number 1? Where did I end up in the pecking order?
Thanks, Guy. And you hit it perfectly. Absolutely. Basically, we've had more than our fair share of officials that have come out, you know, basically being top performers in camps that have not really gone much further than that. And it's no different. Like Guy can totally relate to this on the player development level. And you may have a player at, say, like the 14U level who stands above and beyond all the other players at that 14 and under level. But then all of a sudden, another 2 years, another 4 years, and they're playing at that 18 and under level. Everyone else has had a little chance to hit a growth spurt. Everyone else worked a little bit harder. And suddenly that player who's up here at the 14 and U level, everyone's above or like right at their level, if not above, just because a little bit of time and basically applying what they've learned through the player development process. Suddenly that official who's up here doesn't have that head start. They're not quite as far along as the other participants. So it's really, it can't be about the grade. You know, the camps can't define your career, plain and simple. If you go and you have a rough camp, it's not going to define your career. It means you have some things to work on, it means you got some work to do, but it doesn't define your career, plain and simple. At the same time, coming in and knocking out of the park over the course of the week does not mean you got the easy path ahead of you. If I can share one piece of information as far as development, I'm pretty sure the panelists will agree with me on this, is there are really no shortcuts in this business. You know, coming into a camp and having one really good camp over the course of 1 week does not mean you're on the fast track to wherever you want to get to go. There really is no such thing as a fast track. You know, taking shortcuts and things like that will usually only end up as in a disaster. But talking about using that camp as a springboard and moving up and on, we can talk a little bit about the advancement opportunities that may come out of going through the camp process and coming through, say, the Futures Camp. And I'll go to Chuck with this one. You know, as far as advancement opportunities on the men's side, what type of opportunities may come out of participating in a camp, Chuck?
Absolutely. There's a ton of opportunities that arise. I know, especially at the Futures Camp level, where we're starting to see officials for the first time. There's always somebody from a representative from the USA Hockey Officiating Development Program that's there. It may be the boss of the North American Hockey League or the United States Hockey League, or it could just be a representative from that league. I know for myself, I've done the speeches on behalf of the ODP in previous camps. So there's always people that are coming in and out. There's college supervisors that come in and out depending on what area of the world your camp is in, or I should say the country. So there's always tons of people that are going in and out. And one thing that's important is your instructors themselves. We have direct lines to the leagues that we represent. I know when I do some of the higher level camps, I get a call after the camp's over, usually from one of the bosses in the ECHL. And they're like, is there anybody that caught your eye? So even if somebody's not directly there, or a boss or a supervisor in a league that you potentially want to work for, the supervisor's eyes, and you never know who's there, and that can help you springboard to where you want to go.
Thanks, Chuck. All really, really good points. So passing it over to Mo being on the women's side, the female side of things, a little bit different from the men's side, not totally different, but they have their pathway of advancement opportunities. What type of advancement opportunities and next steps exist after Futures Camp on the women's side?
Yeah. After Futures Camp, we typically tell the girls to go back and continue working on what we've been working on during camp and improving all the skills that we've talked about. Getting to some national championships for some more exposure and more supervision is always helpful. To get them into elite camp, which we mentioned earlier, that gives them the opportunity to work at basically our highest level hockey for women's hockey. The U18 and the U22 camps that they put on for the women. At that point, if you get your international license, you then have the opportunity to skate there. And the thing that's really fun about where we are right now in the world is we now have even more opportunities. And I was lucky enough to be part of the ODP for a couple of years there before the Olympics, and that's just growing now. So it's not even cut off with women's hockey. The ability for women to officiate on the men's side is only growing. So we're always looking for those women to take it up another level. It's incredible. So there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Thanks, Mo. Really, really good. One question somebody asked, and it's not necessarily directly related to camp, but I did want to answer that question just before we begin to wrap things up, as we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I'm about to break the 1 hour threshold for my 8th straight Zoomcast. Somebody asked along the lines of, I'm a relatively new official. I want to stand out. I want to earn opportunities. What are good ways? And we've hosted a lot of virtual seminars this year, particularly for level 1s and level 2 officials that are relatively new to the process. And generally my parting words, particularly to the brand new level 1s who are just getting into this business and trying to make them aware of what the expectations are. Because I know a lot of new officials kind of come in with the mentality they're afraid they're going to take some heat, take some criticism, get yelled at by coaches. And the thing that I've always said to them as brand new officials is, if you really want to do well in this business and earn opportunities, get good at your job. It's that simple. And basically it's going out there, through a continuing education, and education doesn't stop with the modules. It doesn't stop with the seminar, getting in the rule book every single day. If you haven't skated in a while, let's say you haven't skated in a few weeks, maybe you go out to a lunchtime skate or something like that, just to get an hour of ice before you get out there and work games. Finding mentors and finding other officials that you can learn from, and just take every opportunity that you can get better and learn and ultimately get good at your job. Because nobody yells at somebody who's good at their job. We don't yell at people who are good at their job. People who work hard, put in an honest effort and try really, really hard. We don't yell at those people. We yell at lazy people. We yell at people who obviously don't care and they're apathetic and don't really put any effort in whatsoever. Those people get yelled at. We don't yell at people who are good at their job. So that's really the best piece of advice I can give to that person who really wants to move up. And then ultimately on top of that too, getting on top of being good at your job, be a good person. Be the person that everybody wants to work with. Be the person that everybody wants to be in the locker room with. Just be a good person and be a good teammate. We've talked a lot about teamwork over the course of this hour here. Be a good teammate to everybody. So as we've kind of reached and breached the top of the hour, we're going to begin to wrap things up. I'm going to share the upcoming schedule with everybody. As you can see, this is February 23rd, and we're doing episode 34, Summer Development Camps. Coming up next week, we have another USA Hockey Program update. So another State of the Union episode. Matt Leaf is going to be joined by Dave Labuda, our National Referee in Chief, and Pat Pacici, who is our Northern Plains District Referee in Chief. And they're going to talk about a lot of the buzz and the hot topics going on within the officiating world and even within USA Hockey. So lots of good information that's going to be passed along next week. So I encourage everybody to tune in and watch that episode. Going on from that, we have episode 36, Managing Mistakes. Scott Zelkin will be in the captain's chair for that one. Should be a really, really fun nuts and bolts. Well, talking about mistakes isn't necessarily fun, but should be a really, really good educational episode. Talking a little bit more nuts and bolts. Managing mistakes and getting through mistakes is a fundamental skill that all officials really kind of have to work on whether you miss an offsides call, whether you have a really sticky goal situation, or a missed body check or something like that the bench ultimately thinks should be penalized, and for whatever reason maybe you missed it or miscalled it. Managing those mistakes is a skill that you have to work on. And Scott's going to be joined by a couple of top-level officials to discuss strategy for managing your mistakes out there on the ice. And then lastly retention of officials. No question. Retention of officials is by far and away a hot topic within USA Hockey. I'm sure they're going to talk about it a little bit next week, but it's always an ongoing discussion amongst our ICs and all local associations. The reality of it is, all those new level 1 officials that I just talked about a couple of minutes ago, from year 1 to year 2, we lose half those officials. And this is not a new trend. 20 years of statistics show every single year from year 1 to year 2, we lose half of those brand new officials that come in. Why we lose them? Lots of different reasons. Basically lack of opportunities, and maybe the expectations didn't quite meet up, or amongst some of them. Abuse is another one. But ultimately, getting them from year 1 to year 2, and then year 2 to year 3 is really, really critical, because our other data and research has shown once we get officials to year 3, we hold on to 90% of those officials. So how do we get them from year 1 to year 3? And Matt Leaf's going to be heading up that episode. He's going to be joined by a couple of local supervisors and state RICs to talk about retention trends and basically certain strategies that local associations as well as local hockey communities can take to ultimately retain more officials within that area. So it should be a really, really informative and educational episode. As you saw in that upcoming schedule, quick social media reminder, feel free to go out there and look for us on Twitter and Instagram, those channels, as well as on the USA Hockey YouTube channel. Lots of good information on the Instagram and Twitter channels. We put out updates on behalf of the officiating program, and we also retweet a lot of things from our main USA Hockey channel as well. When we wrap this up, you should get an email for a survey reminder. Please get in there and go into SurveyMonkey and complete that survey. Tell us what you liked about this episode. Tell us how we could have done this episode a little bit better. We're always looking for constructive feedback. Just because we represent staff at summer development camps doesn't mean we can't learn as well. We're always looking for ways to make these programs a little bit better. And also, of course, that important question there in the survey that talks about upcoming topics and suggestions for topics, anything you'd like to see us discuss. That's how we make this overall Zoomcast program more successful and cater to our membership better. So please complete that survey when you get the chance. Thank you to the participants. If this is the first time you've ever joined us, welcome. We're really, really happy to have you here, and we hope to see you at a lot more Zoomcasts in the future. If you're one of our diehard regulars, and we know you're out there, we do check the attendee roster every single episode. But our diehard regulars, thank you so much for joining us once again, and we look forward to seeing you on many more episodes to come. We really, really do enjoy doing this every single week, and we have a lot of fun running this program. Thank you to the panelists. Melissa Szkola, Gui Bradshaw, Charlie O'Connor, thank you so much for giving up another hour of your time and your busy schedules and your personal schedules, giving back to USA Hockey and sharing your wisdom and experience from the USA Hockey camps. And we appreciate it. And talk about being a good person and a person that you want to work with. These three people represent the upper echelon of that. People that we always want to work with, people we always want to have in the locker room with, and people we want to have a Zoomcast with. So with that, we'll wrap things up. On behalf of USA Hockey, I'm BJ Ringrose, and have a good evening, and thank you for your dedication to USA Hockey.